Good morning and welcome to the Gemini Zoom meeting. Thank you for taking time out of your busy Friday to tune in with us here. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Tammy Mitchell and I'm the Elementary Redesign Specialist. If you could wave at me to make sure that you are hearing me, that would be fantastic. Testing. I'm getting no feedback from anyone. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. All right, super. Just a reminder, I will keep you all muted but you can unmute yourself to speak. That just helps with some of the background noise, and I know you're all busy, and sometimes the background conversations that are taking place in your office as well as in mine are not necessarily for the ears of everyone across the state. So do feel free to unmute whenever you need to, but until then, we'll keep you muted. You're also welcome to use the chat feature. We will address any questions that you have in the chat. So it's my pleasure to introduce the Mercury schools from Olathe. We've got Westview Elementary staff and we've got Santa Fe Trail staff with us today. They're going to be talking a bit about where they're at in the redesign process, and if your Gemini project is jogging right alongside Mercury, you know, we want to hear from you. And if you're kind of hanging back and watching the Mercury kind of lead the way, and you have questions for them, you know, that's okay too. Everybody's in a kind of a different place with this redesign right now, and we want to make sure that you're completely supported as much as possible. Also remember that these Zoom meetings are recorded, and if you're unsure about whether or not your camera is on, you should assume that it's on, and if you don't want it to be on, you know, just take a little Post-it note and put it right over that. Sometimes people get busy or facial expressions get somewhat humorous, and it will be recorded for all to see forever and ever. So wanted to let you know about that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hear from Westview Elementary School in Olathe. Hello, Westview people.
Hey, Tammy, how are you?
We're good, we're good. I'm not sure where your microphone is, but as you speak, you're gonna either need to use your lunchroom voice or move a little closer to your microphone.
Sounds good. Can you hear us now?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
All right.
So who have you got with you today?
So I'm John Bell, I'm the principal here at Westview, and I have Megan Bartek, one of our second grade teachers. I have Brandon Salazar, one of our ELL teachers, and Brandon Michaelis, who has a district role. She is an instructional resource teacher for the district, and previously taught at Westview. Great.
So, you know, lead the way. What's going on at Westview? Where are you at in the timeline? And tell us about the things you're piloting.
So right now we are hot and heavy into the pilot. We are, it started in January. We had completely redone our entire schedules throughout the school so that we could try some different things. We are doing a community breakfast every morning from 8 to 8:30 where the kids come in and they meet in the mixed grade level groupings. And with those mixed grade level groupings, they eat breakfast together as a family, and then they also talk about just some things to get their day started right, like social emotional type things like
so today, for example, the past couple of days we've been working on like how to greet people and kind of like hold a conversation with somebody. So they come in the morning and they have to greet somebody that they're sitting at a table with, and then there's like a prompt up on the board or a question that this is just how our group does it, but they answer a question, but they have to talk back and forth. So really getting them into a routine of having and holding a conversation with somebody other than just looking at the teacher. And it's actually going really well. And so then we do like our Pledge of Allegiance all together, and then they dismiss to go back to their homerooms for the rest of the day.
And another component we're piloting is our 4th and 5th grade group classes have all combined into one large, we call it a den. And so for the morning from about 8:30 until 11 o'clock every morning, that's about 85 kids that are combined together. And and they're doing project-based learning during that time, and then they're also getting some personalized groups in math and language arts at their ability levels. And Brianna's actually one of the teachers that's working on that team. So we have 5 classroom teachers, and then we have a dedicated resource teacher and a dedicated ELL teacher that work on that team. So it's 7 certified teachers and then 2 classified staff members that work with those 85 students. I'll let Brianna kind of talk a little bit about those experiences.
It's been really great to really meet the needs of the students on their standards and really focusing on the standards for each of those groups, but then also having that time for project-based learning and them getting to work in mixed grade level groups. So that each PBL group has 4th and 5th graders in that group, but they get to spend time working on their PBL. And then we also have 4 recesses a day that we've been piloting. Each group has 15-minute recess 4 times a day. And the students seem to be enjoying that a lot.
And so our plan for next year, if this pilot goes well, is that we'll also do a combined 2nd, 3rd grade level group and then a combined kindergarten and 1st grade group, following a similar format where they're doing project-based learning. And then during that time, we're also pulling students to do some personalized learning groups in math and language arts. And in the afternoon, we kind of split that up more into grade level groups, and they do their grade level math and their grade level ELA. And then we also, we haven't got it up and running yet, where that's what kind of next on our agenda is getting, we have a student leadership time at the end of the day where every student in the building is going to have a job, like being on student council or making announcements, recycling, gardening, those types of things. And we'll have every student in the building that has a job throughout the building for every day where they're working on those jobs. We'll have to apply for them and those types of things. And so those are kind of the things that we're piloting. Brandy has been in charge of our community group, and we haven't got a lot of our community involvement pieces up and running yet. A lot of them, we have their big ideas that are going to take a little bit longer to get going, I think. And things like building relationships with families take time. It's not something that we can just pilot for a semester. But I'll let Brandy talk about a little bit about the things we're looking at there.
We are looking at doing home visits between now and the end of the year, so that teachers and any staff members who are willing and would like to can go out and start to visit families and really build those relationships. We know it's the end of the year, and so we have some good relationships with our families, but it's something we'd like to definitely continue and maybe be able to see families at multiple times school year, maybe before school starts, kind of during mid-year, and then again at the end. So that's something we hope to bring. And we really have a big focus on kindergarten readiness, and we want to find ways to meet with our birth to 5-year-olds and really start to build those early learning skills with the kindergarten or with the pre-kindergarten students. We're going to kind of look at shifting the way that we currently have early learning opportunities at Westview to make them more inclusive of just our Westview students, so that we are spending time with them as they are 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and transition into kindergarten. But that will happen over the next few years.
So tell us a little bit about how the rest of your staff has been engaged in this process, and how, I think one of the things we're hearing from the Gemini schools is that, wow, this takes a lot of time. And how do you engage all of your staff members? How did you do that and go through that research process?
So just from the very beginning, our staff has been pretty on board with this whole process, just because we have we're in Johnson County, but we have some unique demographics for Johnson County, where we have about 80% of our kids are free and reduced lunch, and about 60% of them are Spanish-speaking students. And so the traditional methods that have always worked for all the other Olathe schools haven't worked for Westview. And so when this opportunity was presented to us, we had a lot of staff buy-in right from the get-go, because we've been working really hard and not seeing the results we wanted to see. And so when we started in August, I built this team here, and we're missing one person today, Ms. Kilby, who was a 4th grade teacher, but the 5 of us have met on a regular basis to kind of figure out how we're going to get through this redesign process, and working with Tammy. And so we started by just collecting a lot of information, asking a lot of questions. We surveyed staff, we surveyed parents, and we surveyed every student in the building, and came up with kind of like our core beliefs and values. We figured out our vision for what we want to do with our redesign. And once we got that vision, then we kind of said, okay, all those wonderful ideas and everything, we kind of put them in silos and said, okay, well, we have project-based learning was a key component, social-emotional learning was a key component, personalized learning, and also that community involvement piece. And so each of the people on the team each led a different research and development team, and we presented that to staff and said, okay, we'd love some volunteers to be on our teams. And we had every single one of our certified staff members volunteer to be on one of the 4 teams. And so those teams met probably between October and December, probably 5 or 6 times each, to kind of determine what areas we would want to pilot this next semester. And then our team continually met to kind of make sure that the plan came together as one cohesive plan and not 4 separate plans. And so we decided what were those priorities, what were the things we could try this semester, what were some things that needed to wait until next year to try. And then now, obviously, we're in the middle of our piloting. But those research and development teams are still meeting because, just like Brandy said, like we haven't implemented a lot of things yet. We still have a lot of planning left to do. Same thing with personalized learning. Same thing with social emotional learning. We have lots of things left that we're like I think we probably have more things we know we need to do now than we did back in October, which is a little stressful. But at the same time, it's kind of exciting that we get to keep making this change. And I think it's going to be a multi-year process. It's not going to be next year as 100%. We're at a completely redesigned school. I think it's going to look completely different, but there's going to be so much more that we want to do also.
So tell me, so far, someone, well, John, you can share, but maybe some of your other team members too. What has been the most exciting part of this work to date?
I think just being able to have free reign, and like we've always said through this whole process of, from the district office down, like we've always been told what to do, and it's like we've really been able to like take the, like John was saying, the demographics of our school and shape how we do school here at Westview. So it's been really, it's just like cookie cutter to us now instead of the opposite way. So that's what's been really exciting for me, at least in my experience through all of this.
Really looking at student needs and just saying, what do these students need for the personalized learning, but what do they need as social emotional learning, and really just kind of getting deeper with what we can do.
I think the whole dreaming big piece, like we were so tunnel vision for a while, it took us a little time to get outside that box of education and think, what could this look like here? And so I think that's been really fun, just sharing and building that vision together.
And I also think it's just been fun, like watching the staff get excited about teaching again. I feel like you get in that rut where you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And everything this year is fresh and new, and there's a lot of stress with this also. But the excitement for trying new things. We did some professional learning on project-based learning a couple weeks ago, and I've never seen my staff so engaged in professional learning and excited. And in the discussions afterwards and the implementation, usually it's like pulling teeth to kind of get new ideas out there. But this, people are taking off with everything, and so it's really exciting just to come to work every day and see the great things that are happening, and the excitement from the kids and the excitement from the staff. So it's been a lot of fun.
I would say the level of collaboration between teachers, across grade levels, across curricular areas. There's just been so much more collaboration, and that's been great.
So yeah, what's stressing you out right now?
Everything.
Time. We need more time.
So like Brianna's on our 4th and 5th grade pilot team that's implementing all these changes, and the amount of planning that has taken has been a lot more than I ever would have envisioned it takes. And in trying to balance that with, we also have redesign things that we need to do, like this team needs to meet, and not wanting to pull different people away from different classrooms and things. And so trying to figure out what's the best way to get from this point where we're at right now with the pilot to our plan for next year, because there's a lot of work we still have to do, but trying to find the right time to do that so that we're not overwhelming people, but also we're still moving forward with things. I think that's been tricky. Our district's been very supportive with getting us subs when we need subs and things like that. And so, we're trying to balance that. Do you want to be out of the classroom and write sub plans, or do you want to be in your classroom and meet after school and those kinds of things? But I think that time piece is our biggest stress right now. I think, like I said, everything's really exciting and new, but it just takes a lot of, when you have that many people around the table, it takes a long time to get all those logistics figured out and everybody on the same page. And I think as we get into this, a year from now, my hope is that we've replaced all these other things that we used to do, and this isn't taking more time. But I think the transition from point A to point B it does take some time.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm hearing from a lot of the Mercury elementary schools that are at the same spot where they're piloting all of these different lead measures or levers that will move their goal areas is that they're piloting these prototypes in the old system, and it's clunky, and we knew that, but you know, we've been talking all along, you know, what's the difference between innovating in pockets versus redesigning a system. And schools are saying, okay, you know, before we didn't really get what you were talking about, but now we get it. Now we're like, well, if we want this to work and if we want to sustain it, we've got to change our system. So I think everybody's kind of in that same spot of piloting on a small scale within a system that's not changed yet. And so, you know, next year, as you're thinking about, okay, now we're going to do this, what are we taking off the plate? How does the schedule look different? All of those pieces will come together. But it is clunky right now. And,
it is.
And we knew it would be. It's just clunkier in ways that, well, it's like, John, you and I were talking earlier this week. It's like the things we thought would be clunky have gone pretty smoothly. And the things you thought were going to be smooth have been clunkier than you thought.
Yep.
Yeah.
And on Monday, we presented to our district leadership just to say, you know, here are some things, in order for us to make this plan work next year, here's everything that we need. And I think you're right, we're piloting within this old system, and really for everything to work next year, we need, there's a lot of things that we need from district administration, with staffing, with resources, with shifting just some little things that a lot of them seem really silly and small. But all those little things make a big difference. And so, I mean, I'm thinking about how we do attendance right now with this community breakfast, how we make sure we know where all of our kids are. And our office staff is having to work extra hard right now because they're trying to make sure before they call parents and say, your kid's not here today, that they know that the kid's actually not here, because we've kind of upset the fruit basket with what our mornings look like from 8 to 8:30. And so it's just little things like that I think if we can get some of those things in place, so we can kind of redesign that system aspect, the teaching part of it will fall into place a little easier than it has this semester with the pilot.
Yeah. So Gemini Schools, what questions do you have at this point? I'm not seeing any in the chat, but if you want to go ahead and chat or unmute, we'll give you a minute or so to pose any questions so far. Okay, well, Westview, some of the things that you're learning from your pilots, how you talked a little bit about your DENS and how you're scaling that up. So at this point, and I know it's a little early, what do you envision your redesign to look like? Or maybe you want to talk a little bit about some of the results that you're already seeing, whichever way you want to go with that.
I feel like some of our behaviors, like students are getting so much more movement and flexibility and voice and choice, that some of the behaviors have calmed down from some of our kids that maybe before were struggling in the old system.
We don't have a lot of academic data yet, because it's really just been about 4 weeks at this point that we've been doing it. And we have some baseline data that we collected from kids, and we're actually getting ready to survey our kids again on Thursday or Friday this week to kind of see what that looks like. And then we're going to do that again right before spring break. So we'll have, like, we can see some trend data there on just student perception of school and how much they like what they're doing. And so I'm excited to kind of get that data and see where we're at. And we've collected some data from parents, but again, it's all baseline data at this point. We don't have the trend data. But I think so far, we've already noticed there are certain things about the pilot schedule-wise that are working, and there's other things that aren't working. We thought that a 45-minute lunch sounded great for elementary kids because we had kids that were rushing to eat. We're finding that probably isn't the right amount of time. So we're adjusting and changing and trying to figure out, what is that right amount? And what should that time look like? We want to maximize the time that we have, but we also don't want to cram. I feel like in education, a lot of times we try to squeeze too much into a small amount of time. And so we tried to give some more time for some of those types of things, but we haven't landed on what's that right amount yet. So I think that's what's great about the pilot, is that we have the opportunity to shift and change and adjust. We can't do major things a lot of the time because, schedules are locked in place, and changing the schedule upsets the whole building schedule then. But I think we're able to play with things enough that I think we'll get a good plan for next year when we roll it out to K1 and 2-3. Things should be a little smoother than what they are right now with 4-5.
And we're looking at even just shifting with the instructional time that we do have, shifting some of those areas and some of our groups, and also integrating more during the ELA grade level time in the afternoon, and really seeing how we can integrate the PBL more and not keep that isolated so much in the afternoon. So I think we're still making a lot of changes that way and just seeing what works and continuing to evolve.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been really excited and impressed with is your attempts to provide your ELL services and more of your SPED services in a push-in kind of environment instead of a pull-out. Can you tell us a little bit about what Westview used to do in the past and how you're wanting to change that for the future?
Sure. Before we would, each grade level had about an hour of pull-out a day, and then if we had newcomers, which were students that maybe just came from another country and were still very, very limited in their English, they would get some additional time. But they never got over probably an hour and a half of service time, which was all pull-out time. And now, because we are putting grade levels together and really focusing like one ELL teacher with 4-5 and then the 2-3 and K1, moving that direction, we are seeing that there's a lot more integration between what ELL is doing and what the classroom is doing. So I am there more supporting and providing accommodations throughout the entire day with the ELL students instead of pulling out constantly. So it's just more cohesive and consistent instruction between the grade level teachers and then the ELL aspect.
And SPED looks very similar with that also. And right now, because of the way we did our pilot, our SPED teacher has too many kids in our caseload. Our goal for next year is to have much fewer kids so they can do a better job of supporting that. So I think she's a little stretched this semester. But I think our goal is that rather than doing everything through pull-out, which is the way we've typically done things, is to do the majority of it through supporting within the natural setting of the classroom, of through the PBL or through their grade level math and ELA time. And then there's going to be a few kids here and there that need maybe some additional things. But for the most part, our goal is to provide most of that support within the classroom rather than out of the classroom.
And then those personalized groups in the morning are a great opportunity for resource to still work with some of their students specifically. And then for like me, I have newcomers. I have about 7 newcomers at this point. And so I get some specific time with them during their personalized grouping time that I'm pre-teaching or preloading vocabulary for their PBL or for their ELA time in the afternoon, which is really nice to see that flow over between the 2 times.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. We'll transition now to Santa Fe Trail. Again, anyone that's on here, if you have questions or even just comments, you know, it takes a lot of courage for a school group to get on and be just very transparent about what's going well and what's been a challenge. So, you know, feel free to put comments in that chat too that are supportive, even if they're not specifically questions. Westview, thank you. I don't know if you're going to stay on or if you're going to listen in for the rest of it, but I appreciate your time. And we will now, I'm gonna mute Westview, and then Santa Fe Trail can join our conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I've got 2 Santa Fe schools on here, so I will hopefully, okay, Santa Fe Trail, I think you're unmuted. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi, Tammy.
Yeah, thank you
Hi.
for having us. We all decided to dress in red for the occasion, so
Apparently.
that's part of it.
Okay, you're gonna have to either speak louder or get closer. So,
Closer. We just said that we all decided to dress in red today.
well, there you go. Look at, you look like you planned it, so.
We actually didn't, but it just kind of worked out that way.
Super. All right, well, introduce your team to us, and yeah, and we'll get started here.
So my name's JJ Leibel. I'm the principal here at SFT.
Caleb Stoppel. I'm an assistant principal.
I'm
I'm Erin Richardson. I'm the other assistant principal here.
Great. So yeah, kind of in a similar fashion, how are things going for you? Where are you at? Give us an update.
Well, we can start off by talking a little bit about SFT. Our demographics are pretty similar to Westview's. We are in Johnson County, but we are a very, very diverse school. We have about 750 students, 50% of which are a little bit higher than that are free and reduced, and about 30% of our students are ELL. So that's a little bit about our demographics. And it's one of the things that's been a little bit difficult is we don't have Westview is not one of our feeder schools. Although we've been working together with them very well, I think one of the advantages to some of the smaller districts that are out there is if you can get your feeder and middle high schools in the same line, I think that's something that can be really, really powerful for your district as well. So we can just kind of start off by talking a little bit about kind of how we started this process. So we started by collecting information and getting data. We've put out surveys to the students. We've done parent surveys, staff surveys. We actually did something called a student-led forum, where we had some of the students that were already our web leaders, which is kind of a 6th grade integration program, and some of our AIM leaders, which is kind of a college readiness program. They led a student forum, and we asked some students to attend that were selected by our teams, and they kind of rotated around with a set of questions and received information from the students. So we tried to do a good job of kind of collecting information from our stakeholders and really trying to listen to what the students want as well, especially at the middle school level. And then as far as our redesign team goes, we selected a redesign team that was not everybody on our redesign team was part of our building level team. We have a really, really strong BLT here at Santa Fe Trail, but we felt like we wanted to get a few staff members that were not, maybe not a member of BLT, but that were still instructional leaders within the building. We did include a couple of BLT members. So we've really kind of had two things going on at the same time. We've had our BLT moving forward with the initiatives that we started at the beginning of the year that we felt really, really good about. And then we've had our school redesign team meeting as well. So one of the things that we will need to do at the end of the year, we've already started these discussions, is how we bring that entire group together, because both groups are very, very strong. And so how we kind of bring that together is going to be something that we need to work on as well. And then,
so yeah, that's interesting. Our advice at the beginning was exactly what you've done, and that is you've got a building leadership team that's working on the business of this year and some of those things that you have put in place, but then you had a redesign team that was thinking ahead to next year. And so did you have any members that crossed over the two, or were they two completely separate groups?
we have about, two members of our BLT that are also part of the school redesign team. And then we try to make sure that we have one of our leads, our BLT leads, at every meeting as well. And then we're encouraging now our school redesign members to attend BLT meetings and vice versa for BLT members to attend school redesign.
So then next year, do you see those then as being one committee? Like you wouldn't need a redesign group, because that would be then the work of your building leadership team?
That's what we hope for, right? Yeah, I think that it was important to, and Jay really recommended, because there was some discussion after winter break of what do we do now with redesign, because we had set the pillars and our lead measures and those kinds of things, and should we still continue to meet? And he said, that he really encouraged us to continue to meet, which was a good decision, so we can keep going. But I think for our perspective in our school, we really have to come together and really have an effort. And I'm not sure it'll continue to be called design in the future. Hopefully it's just kind of the work that we do.
Yeah. So tell us about your pillars and your goal areas or lead measures.
I can talk a little bit about our pillars. Okay. So our pillars are really focused around SEL, and then an academic focus and our civic engagement focus. And so specifically, and we've really valued our work with the 40X model, and I think that's something that can really speak to the redesign team, as well as even kind of something we're trying to infuse through BLT as we talk about that partnership, that both groups have done well, especially redesign to immerse themselves in the 40X model as we kind of develop. Can you talk a little bit more about our measures?
So we selected 3 pillars: social emotional learning, academic, and civic engagement are the 3 pillars that we selected. And then within those pillars, we formed investigation teams that met 3 times before winter break. They actually met during the school day, and the district was great to provide subs so that those teachers could meet during the day. And then from those meetings, we developed kind of our lead measures and what we were piloting. And we finished up with 1 pilot in the SEL pillar that I can talk about, and we're getting ready to start another one next Friday.
Yeah, so tell us about your SEL pilot.
Okay, so kind of very similar to something that Westview did with kind of their morning breakfast. It's kind of the same concept, but we call it Cyclone Startup and then Cyclone Wrap Up at the end of the day. And so what we found is that we had a lot of our students, and we started to look at the data, the number of tardies that we were having to first hour, and the amount of academic time that takes away, and plus kids coming in late and then stressed out and then jumping into a difficult class right away in the morning. So we started by piloting a 25-minute Cyclone Startup where the kids would come in. We called it really a closed shop and a soft start to land in the morning. And our pilot group really focused on mentoring and goal setting and kind of that social emotional learning as well. And so we offered, we have a second chance breakfast program anyway. We moved that towards the beginning of the day and offered that to about 8 o'clock. So even students that were coming in late could just grab breakfast and go straight to Cyclone Start. We did a wrap up at the end of the day that was about 11 minutes long. And that was just kind of a touch point at the end of the day. We really asked the teachers to focus on a positive start and a positive finish to the day. Looking back on it, we wish that we would have, one thing that we've changed is we want to make that wrap up time a little bit longer, because 11 minutes was not really long enough at the end of the day to really sufficiently do that. But overall, we had really good results from the data that we took from our pilot that did that startup and wrap up.
I can share a couple of components of that too. It's kind of been interesting that, when we've started a pilot and you have, some hopes and fears on both sides, change is hard. And so we go through the pilot, and then as soon as we done with the pilot and are looking to start a next pilot, and new fears arise, the comments about the old pilot is, oh, but we missed that. Why can't we do that again? And so it's been interesting how that's happened pilot after pilot now. The initial shock value is one of resistance, because we say change is hard. But as soon as we get through it and people see the impact, for example, with our Cyclone Startup and Wrap Up, we had a ton of tardies through the first semester of the year, upwards of 1,700 tardies to first hour. And just by, incorporating this quote soft start to it and intentional start to their day, we've now systematically offered a better, option solution for kids getting to class on time to that first hour, but also kids are moving more intentionally to their time. The way the schedule set up, when we did carve out more time for this startup and wrap up, it kind of carved our passing periods down to 4 minutes, which seemed pretty quick for, a building of 740 kids and We're an older pod style building, 50 years old this year. And so the kids had to move to get to class. They necessarily didn't like it, but they all got to class on time. And ironically, after we moved out of this pilot, they were almost lingering more in the hallways because they didn't know what to do with that extra minute back. And so that's made us, be really in tune to thinking, okay, even though they might not say that they love it, they sure got to class on time. So maybe we're looking at saving some time there with some shorter passing periods. And then finally, with that wrap up, when we talked about some non-negotiables with this startup time and the wrap up time, we basically said, hey folks, what do our kids need coming to school? And our kids do. We have academic goals and mindset to establish, but our kids, we feel, need a little bit more by coming to school at Santa Fe Trail, whether it's to kind of meet some challenges of poverty or trauma coming into school or whatever it might be. And so non-negotiables of welcoming that kid for startup time, meeting their needs, making sure you give a positive start to their day, establishing some goals for that day and that week. And then at the end, non-negotiable of just sending them on their way with a positive end to their day. And although that might sound, a little fluffy, our staff really took that to heart and our kids responded very well. And I think they appreciated, some of that, personalized learning to a sense, but stepping away academically, putting them first in mind to, okay, what do you need? And how do we look outside the traditional confines to give you what you need when it comes to school?
So what kinds of things are you still going to pilot? What are you starting?
So coming up next week, we are looking at what we're calling an exploration day. So our mission from the get-go that we developed the redesign team was empowering all learners to explore. And so we wanted to be very intentional in providing a time for large project-based learning, for large community outreach and civic engagement across all grade levels and across all subject areas. So what we're doing next Friday is we've divided our day into 3 2-hour chunks, and teachers are working collaboratively. For example, we have our shop teacher, for lack of a better term, working with a 7th grade history teacher. They are collaborating to build dog houses that they will then donate to the ASPCA. So we're wanting to really develop a way for our students to think globally but act locally. And so through this exploration, we've got guest speakers coming in to provide a babysitting certification program for our students should they choose. And this exploration day is all built around student choice. And that was one of the things that JJ mentioned earlier when we did our student-led forum. We wanted to know what the kids had to say about their school day. And when it came down to it, they were only spending 2 to 3 hours of their school day on stuff that they like to do and felt like they didn't have a whole lot of choice in the rest of it. So we wanted to provide a place where we could still build some academic skills and some community outreach, but give a chance for students to provide, some feedback and have some choice in what they were doing through the day. So we're really looking forward to Exploration Day. It's causing a lot of stress in our building, as you can imagine, of, trying to find a place for 740 kids and where are they all going to be, and then what are they going to do when the time shifts, and some people are going to be meeting off campus. So, it's so very different from what we're used to doing. So everybody's stress level's a little high looking at it, but it's coming and I'm really excited about it. So.
Yeah. So yeah, there is such a thing as good stress, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So, so I'm going to ask a similar question that I asked Westview. Up to this point, what about this process has been the most exciting for you and for your staff?
I think for me, it's really been, you talk about kind of those unintentional consequences and things that come up. For me, it has been the teachers that overall have been given permission to try something new. And I think that permission has always been there, but really not as intentional as we are now. And so what my big push is for next year is that we can change schedules. We can, offer different exploration days and things like that. But if But if the classrooms look exactly the same as they did this year, then we really didn't redesign. And that's not to say that we're doing anything wrong or poorly. We're very proud of what we're doing here and working with kids, but how is it actually going to look different in the classroom? So that's where our building level team, we're really working with them to say, okay, now is your part of this is how is instruction going to look different from classroom to classroom? And so I think one of the most exciting pieces for me has been the things that teachers are doing right now that's not really part of a pilot. Things like we have our language arts teachers and our social studies teachers that are doing a combined district assessment that's over DBQs, document-based questions, where the social studies teachers are doing the documents and the language arts teachers are doing the writing. We've had a lot of work with our teams that are moving kids around for intervention. So for example, one teacher at the same grade level may take the kids that have mastered the concept and they go and do extension activities, and the other teacher takes kids and they do some reteaching, but do it in a different way than was done before based on data. So just a lot more of that. Teachers that are trying to do a little more project-based learning in their classes. So I think that's been the best thing that I've seen so far. And then number two would be, just from our standpoint, we've had many teachers that are outstanding teachers, but that really have not been in leadership positions before. And so we've really increased our leadership capacity because we brought on other teachers that maybe were not part of BLT or not on a committee before, but they were really excited about redesign. So they joined that, and now they are, they are presenting to the staff, and they are up there and they are going to conferences. So those have been kind of two unintentional things that were great surprises.
Another thing that did blossom from the very, inception of this started was just this monumental undertaking, but just lofty, pie in the sky of like, there's no rules. Like, we heard from Dr. Watson and we shared messages of, guys, if they would have known how to do this, they would have told us. And so that is our charge. And truly, there's no limit right now. And so as we were really just chewing on the why and the philosophy and, how we desperately need something like this, but then, falling off the cliff on the what, because, that was the big question mark. What I really have enjoyed continuing to see, despite challenge, despite, one step forward, two step backs, it feels like some days, is there still is an emphasis on dreaming. And that, guys, when we get stuck in the mud, why are we even trying this? It's for the kids. The kids deserve it. They need it. Why not? Why not us? We talk about a lot of challenges that our kids are coming into school with that are similar with any school. But then the response that's met to that is, why not us? Our kids are going to be competing with other Johnson County students, with other students across the state, with students across the nation and world. So despite challenges, why not our kids? And so that charge that I think extends through our staff has to ebb and flow. And at some point, we kind of use analogies like we have people that are the gas on the pedal, we have people that are nitro, and then we have people that just need to sit back and listen for a little bit, and that's okay. But the whole time is that it's okay to dream, and because we have big things ahead, and that still is existent every day. And at some point when we're talking about big decisions and pilots, the statement too is, make us say no, whether that's literally us, whether that's, the staff as a whole as the decision-making body, whether that's district leadership, make us say no to an idea because it's too wild or too not logistical. And staff is constantly surprised at how often there are no no's.
Okay, well, that's inspiring to me to get to hear from you, because I don't necessarily work with the middle schools or the high schools very often. One of the things that we're kind of feeling, and maybe you can either dispel this myth or you can confirm it, but it seems like as Jay and I drive around and we compare and coach each other quite a bit, it seems like with this redesign thus far, that middle schools and high schools have a heavier lift when it comes to redesigning, or they have a bigger challenge. What would you say to that statement? Would you say that's true? Would you say that's false? And why?
Yeah, I think it is more difficult. It is a larger challenge. I think just from the fact that you have 65 staff members, and you have 740, 50 kids. I think it is. We're in a large school district of 30,000 students, so I think the hard part is that this, we have a lot of other things that we're doing too. Not that the elementary schools do not, of course, but that I think it is a little bit more of a challenge to get more people on board in a bigger school system, and to kind of keep that positivity going as well as you go through this process. But I think one of the biggest things is kind of that fear of the unknown. A lot of staff just know how to do traditional school pretty well, but this is something totally different, and we're not sure of the end result yet. So trying to make sure that everybody feels like this is going to be okay, this is going to be great for kids, but we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, is a challenge.
Yeah, and the only things I guess I could echo, past that is from a leadership point of view. So I can only imagine trying to put my teacher hat back on. It's trying to constantly ask for that blind trust, and it's reciprocal both ways, that folks, we don't know what this is going to look like. But again, going back to the kids, it is for the kids, so it's going to be okay. And, reinforcing, you teachers already do a lot of great things. So redesign does not mean that we just bulldoze what we've already done for 50 years and say, we're just going to start from scratch. And that, I think, was kind of a perception coming into it by teachers. I don't know what kind of percentage or whatnot, because it is the unknown. And they say, well, what are you telling me here? That, what we've been doing is not good enough, or that we just have to be this, pilot program, that because this school, and this is my first year here, but, I think historically we've tried a lot of things from a district point of view, from a building point of view. Our people, our teachers are very good at doing what's needed, trying to be innovative and trying new things. And so I think some reluctancy that we had was, hey, okay, just kind of be honest with us. Is this just going to be another one of those things? Or is this something truly that's going to change the way we kind of do education, but also be educators moving forward, period? And, that's something that we can't mandate. That's something that we can't just say, hey, please just blindly follow us. They need the proof, they need reassurance. And that's been tough as leaders, but I can only imagine, how that's felt then as an educator, because it feels unstructured, it feels unorganized, because that's what change feels like, I think.
Yeah, you bring up a good point that in order to change, things don't change on a dime, right? And so this change process in redesign, on the one hand, it's only 1 year. On the other hand, it's a whole year. And so sometimes it feels like it's rush. And then it feels like, okay, what should I be doing now? We had an interesting conversation with Nathan Cross, who is the co-author of the playbook for redesigning schools for the 21st century. And then we've also had a coaching call with some of the publishers from the 4 disciplines of execution. And each time, as we've been talking about this time frame for the Mercury, and how on the one hand, it's kind of in the face of school improvement says to take 3 years, redesign more and more across different areas, it says 1 year. you've got to do it in 1 year because that 3-year time frame, it's really tempting to keep putting things on the back burner and keep, and just not moving things. And yeah, and the other difference between school improvement and redesign is that school improvement assumes that the system is okay and just needs tweaked, right? With redesign, we're changing that system. And, not all instructional practices are going to be completely different, but the instructional practices that we've used in the past have been really, really good for past generations and for the expectations of jobs, in the 20th century. But moving forward, in order to meet that demand for 21st century skills and jobs, we have to modify the way we approach students, the way we think about learning, and know that it can't just be about reading and math. It's got to be the whole student and the whole person. So thank you. Questions from anyone out there in Zoom land? It's so funny. They're so shy on these Zoom meetings, but when you meet them face to face, they're not shy at all.
Can we talk a little bit kind of about one of the things that we're doing with intervention time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So one of the things that I'm sure everybody out there experiences to a certain extent is how do you find time for interventions for students, and then how do you find time to extend those students that need to be extended? And we have done so many different things over the years to try to get kids to come in before and after school, and not any of it has worked really, really well. So one of the things that we are really pushing as part of this redesign is the fact that our interventions need to happen during the school day. And so we're going to, pilot a intervention time during our assessments, which we will be on a block schedule for our assessments, in which we have some time for students to go into a class and be retaught. We'll have some time where students can go in and get help for just missing assignments and work. And then we'll have some time where students can select from a menu of options similar to Exploration Day, but in a smaller scale, that they can go do during that time as well. So looking at that being piloted this year, and then doing that 2 days a week next year. So probably like on Tuesdays and Thursdays, a different schedule, still with the cyclone startup and wrap up, but with a 30-minute intervention time that we call flex time in the middle of the day for students to do that. And those students would really be assigned by the teacher and through their team on which area they would go to. So alternating, for example, math and social studies on one day, language arts and science on the other days, as far as having those teachers available to do some of those reteaching of those lessons. And since we have teams built in already, we're pretty in extended teams with elective teachers. We're pretty excited about the possibility of that intervention time as well.
Yeah, interventions at the middle school level have always, it's always been a struggle with the schedule. For so long, we've allowed that schedule to dictate everything. And so, yeah, part of that redesign is just changing that schedule, changing it to meet the needs. So.
Also to note, John talked about how they're pursuing, how they're helping their special needs students and their ELL learners. And something that we are also concurrently pursuing is how we can meet the needs of all learners inside the inclusive classroom. Right now, we do depend heavily on, for special ed in general, a resource environment with a couple sections here and there of a co-teaching arrangement. But I think what redesign has done well to light a fire is some intentional efforts to say, hey, let's look at that setting. And if we truly are going to maximize the impact on all learners, then we need to start asking the question, why would it not be what's good for a special education student or what's good for an ELL student? Why would that not also be good for all learners? And so truly looking at, again, something similar to what John said, looking at how we can put either that ELL instructor or that special education teacher cooperatively in that inclusive environment to co-teach with the content specialist to be able to provide that firsthand level instruction there, and then look to see what additional needs might be necessary to perhaps look at that Cyclone startup time to see how we could deliver those direct minutes there, or possibly how we're using then this intervention time. And, you know, that's going to come on the heels of some needed professional development. We're going to have to, you know, increase our intentional focus to a culture surrounded on the inclusive classroom versus, you know, let's make sure we're meeting the needs of this very area and so on. But it's definitely going to increase that focus. You want to talk about ELL?
Yeah. The other thing to touch on is, you know, what Caleb said, what's good for a SPED student is good for all students. What's good for a student is good for all students. And I have a really strong passion for our English language learners. They're currently not, you know, district-wide, they're not performing where we would want them to perform, and their language acquisition is, it's not coming to them as quickly as we want it to. And so one thing that moving forward that we really want to see is we want to see a lot of strategic training and professional development for all faculty members on what a good framework for educating an ELL student looks like, where they are in terms of their language acquisition. And we want that to happen in a gen ed setting rather than in a pull-out setting. So I know you were talking earlier about what John was doing with Push In. I feel very, very strongly that that's the direction that we need to go with our ELL students. And I liked what he was talking about, where, you know, morning time they're out in the gen ed population, in the afternoon it's more of a targeted instruction time for them, grade level wise. So we're looking at something very similar. Currently we have 8th grade ELL students that are in a language arts class with a sheltered ELL teacher, working collaboratively with a social studies gen ed teacher at the 8th grade level. And we found it to be really, really successful. She helped design the instruction using the SIOP framework, if you're familiar with that. And the kids really, really, really enjoyed it. So I would like to see that on a larger scale as we move forward with this.
Great, thank you. All right, anything else, Santa Fe Trail, that you want to say before we move on to some other announcements?
You know, I would just say that, you know, I know that everybody is proud of their staff and the work that they do. But I just want to shout out to our staff that they have been just absolutely amazing through this process. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on here is the relationships with students in the family field. And, you know, I can't think of a staff that, you know, is more poised to kind of take this on right now. And I want to thank them for the work that they've done, because this is not for the faint of heart, and it's not easy work. And so they've been amazing through this.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Gemini Schools, just a couple of announcements. One is that the Mercury districts and several Gemini districts are presenting at the Kansans Can Symposium in Manhattan in early March. If you haven't signed up to go, it should be a really great event. I hope that thanks to our educational service centers and their association for putting that on. Some of them are on this Zoom meeting right now. It should be a really amazing time of collaboration and meeting people. If you know of districts that are curious about being Gemini 2 and they're asking questions, if they're asking you questions and they should be maybe asking Jay or I, please send them our way. I know that there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of excitement about the Gemini 2, and so you know, let's help spread the word. There are also still pockets of places in our state that not only have not heard anything about redesign, they don't know anything about KISA or the new accreditation system. So So yeah, let's try to collaborate and get the word out there too. With that, keep checking on the Padlet. Thanks to Fowler for submitting or uploading some documentation. They wanted some feedback on that. I believe it's what they're beginning to call their comprehensive redesign plan. They've posted that on Padlet. So, keep looking there, keep checking back, and provide encouragement to others as you see some of the things that they're posting. And with that, I'll stay on for just a few minutes in case anyone has any specific questions for their own district. But otherwise, thank you, Westview, and thank you, Santa Fe Trail, for joining us today, and have a fabulous weekend.
Get ready for the conference.